Hey, good evening, guys. This is Andrew coming to you live from my living room. I wanted to do a video quickly to respond to the comments on below my last video about Irwin Schiff. Really important. I wanted to do that because you guys, when you ask questions and when we can trade ideas back and forth, it not only enlightens me, but it kind of just progresses the entire conversation. We both kind of can trade ideas and trade sources and so forth. I love doing that because I'm always in search of knowledge that is practical, meaning knowledge that I can use. I'm really big on that. So anyway, let me go get into my sources. Let's get into books first. Let me turn down the music a little bit. I have music playing in the background. Yeah, so I'm pretty much really into books. In the beginning, at first, I started with self-help books. When I was like 16 years old is when I really started just reading into a lot of things and started learning about the world and how it works. One of the first books I read, this is kind of off topic of politics, but one of the first books I read was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that kind of opened my mind into the way business is done and the way the world runs when you're not just a drone or a worker bee, when you kind of want to get out there and you want to actually build a life of wealth for yourself so you have enough power to be able to do the things that you want to do in life. So Rich Dad Poor Dad was kind of like a foundation or like a building block of my thought process. But it's not the only building block. I also read Inc. and Grow Rich, which is INC and Grow Rich. It's kind of like the title is a spoof on Think and Grow Rich, which I also read. But let's go into Inc. and Grow Rich. Inc. and Grow Rich got into corporate structures and how they can protect your assets and not only help you generate more wealth and more income, but also how they can kind of protect you from other people and how they are separate entities. And they dug into all these kind of tax advantages that you can get from building a corporation. And that kind of opened my eyes too, because I read it at a very young age. The younger you are, the more that you soak up because you're not really set in your ways yet. Another book that I read was, I mentioned it before, it was Think and Grow Rich, which kind of provides, if you read the book, it provides a template for how successful people think, and it cites their examples and it cites like their trials and tribulations and what they went through, and how it kind of ties it together and shows like the common theme and the common traits that successful people have and exhibit. And I kind of like ingested that book whole. I absorbed that book whole pretty much. It was really important. Another book that was, I think, more important than Think and Grow Rich and Ink and Grow Rich was Unlimited Power by Tony Robbins. Phenomenal book. It really digs into how you can kind of turn on your own switches. It digs into a little bit of neuro linguistic programming, which is called NLP. And it also pretty much outlines a format for how you can turn on the switch in your life and make things happen in your life. There's like a whole structure and format, and I'm not going to tell you because I want you to actually read the book. Pick up Unlimited Power, read the book, and really apply the logic. Internalize the logic, and you'll see changes in your life. That man, Tony Robbins, is a phenomenal guy. It's like he found the key to life, and he just applies it to his own life, and he helps other people, very successful people, apply it to theirs. And I see why he's been able to build such a successful life and why he helps others do it. Now let's get into the political stuff and power and about that. One of the biggest books on power is The 48 Laws of Power. It's a popular book among those, I guess, in the entertainment industry, but I'm not in the entertainment industry. I was at one point, but I read the book because I thought it was interesting. And, Robert Greene really hits the nail on the head. I think that book should be required reading for people in high school because it outlines how, power games are played against you and how to play them when you have to. And it really depends on the beholder. Like if you're reading that book and you're a good person, you'll use the lessons from that book in a good way. If you're reading that book and you're a bad person, you're going to use the lessons from that book in a bad way. But it's a very good book and it's a must read. I think it's very important. Another book that I read and that I have to attribute a lot of my thought process to is my economics textbook in high school. I don't remember the exact name of it. It was so long ago, in 2003. But that's when I graduated high school, by the way, 2003, and I graduated college in 2007. I'm 30 years old, but my economics textbook opened up my eyes. it wasn't just economics from the Keynesian point of view. It was economics from every point of view, and it was advanced economics, and that's what I was doing as a senior in high school. I was taking advanced economic courses, and it really opened my eyes. It provided a foundation for things and for the way to look at things. My Series 7 and Series 63, taking those exams and passing them and actually applying the knowledge in them really changed my outlook, because there's language that's hidden inside the financial markets that you can't see, that the average person can't see. And if you have a Series 7 or Series 63, or you talk the financial language, you can see things that other people can't see. Most of what happens in the world is hidden in those financial markets. I've seen certain markets change just before a big world event happens, and there's absolutely a reason to believe there's a correlation between them. So it's phenomenal. I've read, and I've listened to Peter Schiff at length. I think he's a financial genius. It's just that he's been discredited because he really bases a lot of his analysis on fundamental analysis. And there's a difference between fundamental and technical analysis. See, if you're a technical analyst and you trade based on technical analysis, you don't have to focus on the fundamentals so much, because you're just making trades based on, graphs and charts and movements, head and shoulders top, head and shoulders reverse. You're just making trades based on that. But if you're a fundamentalist, that means that you do your trades and you make your financial decisions and analysis based on fundamentals. But today there are no fundamentals, because everything is centrally planned. So everything is fake. Nothing's real anymore. So that has kind of, not necessarily ruined Peter Schiff, but it's kind of discredited him among people who watch him and don't understand what's really going on. He's correct in everything he says. It's just that he's never going to be correct outwardly, because we have a Federal Reserve Bank that controls everything. So no matter how correct he is, it's never going to be reflected in the actual markets, because the Federal Reserve is in full control of what's going on. But Peter Schiff is still a genius nonetheless. I mean, he's got all the series licenses, and he's super qualified. He's a genius. I think he's a great guy. Another source is Zeitgeist. I've listened to Gerald Celente. The next source I want you to pay attention to, William T. Still, or Bill Still. Very, very, very sharp guy. Read into his books, Money Masters, his documentaries. If you want to skip the books, very important. Another documentary I watched that was super important was Ring of Power. Super important. Kind of digs into the history of the Rothschild family and the Rockefellers. And I dug into the history of that family myself, because I wanted to see all the connections and connect all the dots and see why they're so powerful and why they have been for over the last 200 years, last 2 centuries. And the reason why is because they follow the laws of power to a T. They made their media, the media that they own, and the power structures that they own may provide or may promote this idea of moralism and taking care of your neighbor and being a good person. And I support those things 100%. But in the game of power, these are not things that they follow. The game of power is a very different game, and that's a game that all these politicians, all these leading businessmen, and all these people who are leading at the top of the banking, the financial world, the business and industry and politics, they all play this power game, okay? And you have to be hip to it to know when the game is being played on you. So as a citizen, since I'm aware of these things, I try to play the game back. But it's hard, because you're surrounded by a bunch of other citizens who don't know the game is being played. So they go and support the candidate they think is most moral, or they go and they support the candidate they think is the nicest one. I'm not into that. I support the candidate whose self-interest is in line with my self-interest, because that's the only way you're going to kind of ensure that they do what you want them to do, when their self-interest is in line with your self-interest. Because at the end of the day, by default, one thing you can be sure about with human beings is that they're going to chase their own self-interest. And it's basically about finding their thumbscrew, which is, believe it or not, one of the laws of power in the 48 Laws of Power. Another book I read was 50th Law, which is about fear. And believe it or not, it's a great book. 50 Cent penned that one. It was great. It's a phenomenal book. More Wealth Without Risk kind of digs into more technical aspects of wealth management. I read a bunch of Susie Orman books. I've read I've read so many books. I can't even like think of all of them right now. It's just obviously I've looked into Drudge and RT and Alex Jones, but I don't just follow whatever is said on those programs. I do my own analysis as well. RT, one of the most interesting things I saw from RT was when Gaddafi was assassinated. They explained why he was assassinated. It made perfect sense to me. I just absorbed it from reading. I read about the Bretton Woods Agreement. I read about the gold standard. I read about the petrodollar. I read about all these things. And the next thing, I see Gaddafi's being assassinated, and they're like, oh, because he's a dictator. They didn't assassinate him because he's a dictator. They assassinated Gaddafi because Gaddafi wanted to only accept trade for his resources, well, his country's resources, in gold dinar. And he was basically setting up a United States of Africa. And he was kind of, I guess, achieving what was supposed to be Marcus Garvey's dream. He was going to do that, and he had the power to do it. I mean, this man was worth $200 billion, and he was going to do it. And then all of a sudden, in pure irony, Barack Obama, kind of supported and promoted the assassination of Gaddafi, and it's just phenomenal. I mean, I'm not saying Gaddafi was an absolute saint, but it just kind of opened my eyes to how these politics are really done. And Saddam Hussein, there was no weapons of mass destruction, but there was a weapon of mass destruction, and it wasn't a nuclear weapon. It was an economic weapon. Saddam Hussein wanted to do the same exact thing Gaddafi did for the Middle East. And that is also why there's a raging war going on. There's proxy wars and there's little covert wars going on in Syria right now with the US versus Russia and China and other things. There's like so many things going on around us that we're not aware about because they're not full blown yet. They're not full scale. So I read all these alternative sources. I've seen all of them. And then I also compare them to the mainstream media sources, which, are really just for entertainment. But I reached a point now where I think I know enough for my own uses. And that's the reason why I absorb the knowledge, not to really go out there and preach to everybody on what they should believe. I tell people what my beliefs are, and I tell people why I back them, how I can back them up, and why I approach politics the way I approach them. And that's it. I was hungry for the knowledge and I dug into it and I got what I wanted out of it. And that's pretty much it. With Donald Trump, I read his book, The Art of the Deal. I've read, Think Big and Kick Ass in Business and Life. I love his philosophy. His philosophy is like, he's still a good person because you can see that reflected in his children and the kind of life he's created around himself. He's still a relatively, decent human being. I mean, he's a tycoon, so of course he's made many enemies, but it's kind of balanced out. But in any case, I read his book and his mindset is so great. A lot of people call this man delusional, and it's like he's not delusional. You just don't think big enough. I mean, if I told you I was going to build towers in every major city in the world and put my name on it in gold, you'd call me delusional. Well, that's exactly what Donald Trump did. So he's not delusional. He just thinks on a bigger level than most people. And I think that it's important to absorb that kind of mentality because that energy that you put out in the universe will come back to you. So if you think as big as Donald Trump, you think bigger than him, it's not to say necessarily you achieve the same exact thing or greater, but you're going to achieve some kind of greatness if that's the way you model your thoughts. Honestly, you're not going to achieve greatness by modeling your thoughts around Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton or whatever. That's just my opinion. I really don't know anybody that has those people as role models that have progressed. I really don't know that many people. Maybe Hillary Clinton, but not Bernie Sanders. But that's pretty much it. Those are the books I read. I'm also going to list the books that I included in here at the bottom in the description section so you can check it out. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I love doing this. I love participating with you guys and trading ideas as well. That's what it's all about. And have a wonderful day.